Hello and welcome to the Future Game Show live at Gamescom Day 2, the blockbuster sequel to the one we did yesterday. My name's Nathan Byrne and I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction.
I would still like one anyway, though.
Okay, it's Jules Gill.
Thank you very much, and over the next few hours we'll be bringing you tons of brand new gaming trailers, updates to games that may or may not already be out, and diving deep into titles with developer interviews.
Oh yes, but first up we've got the new project from Supermassive Games, who made a whole load of your spooky favourites like The Quarry and Until Dawn, a game so scary it made me go pee-pee in my big boy pants.
That's the line you want to go with?
No. Can we cut that?
Yeah.
Can you take that out?
I'm Will Doyle. I'm the creative director of Directive 8020. It is a sci-fi narrative horror. It's a branching horror game. If I was to summarize it in just a few words, it's kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing set in deep space. For the first time, we're giving players much more agency. So we're putting on-the-sticks gameplay, which brings us a lot closer to kind of survival horror in certain aspects of the game. Of course, you've got all the things that you love about the Dark Pictures and about Supermassive Games narrative games. You still have all of the choices and character dynamics that you've had before, but now we put you up against deadly kind of real-time threats as well. But the game itself is kind of structured in the same way that our previous games have been, that there's a lot of care into the pacing of it, getting the kind of cinematic feel to it. So it's not all the time running and hiding. These moments are quite clearly kind of signposted when they're coming. We've kind of completely rebuilt the way the game is controlled from the ground up. Your character can now move around on the left stick, strafing, crouching, running with full right stick camera control, much more like, other kind of best-in-class action-adventure games. And you'll be confronted with real-time threats, so monsters that can prowl around, they can hear you, they can see you, chase after you, ultimately kill you. So these areas are quite signaled to the player, but can happen at any time. And once you're in one of those moments, our creatures are able to kind of disappear, come back again. So it really kind of keeps it on edge and makes each encounter feel quite different as you play it. Space in itself is just really, really terrifying. And so we took effort to get in some of those systems failures kind of moments that a lot of sci-fi films have. So we really built on that, as well as the kind of, sort of direct alien threat that you're up against. We had a lot of fun designing our spaceship to create a kind of really intimidating, claustrophobic environment. And the creature itself, obviously we're taking inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, but it is its own unique entity. It's a creature that can kind of change its form, it can infiltrate your crew and behave as you, but then when it's exposed, it can turn into a really nasty form, which is just trying to kill you. We were really, really lucky to have Lashana Lynch on board playing the character of Young, and there is a kind of sort of dynamic that plays out between her and one of the other characters, the ship's captain, who's called Stafford, and there's a lot of kind of like nice moments between those that really, really develop the character between them. Without giving too much away, there are, that relationship kind of leads towards some really, really big developments towards the end of the game, which I'm really excited to see what people think of them. We don't have an actor in mind when we begin the process, and we were so lucky to get Lashana. She completely smashed it all the way through. We're really seeing, as we show the software to people, we're seeing people's eyes light up. They sit up at that moment where they're like, okay, this isn't just another story from the Dark Pictures. This is something different. It's a big step forward. It's still got everything you love from the Dark Pictures. It's still a narrative game, but it does have these just really intense kind of, real-time moments in it. This is set, a few decades later on from our previous ones, but it's absolutely the same universe. The ship that's sent out there is manufactured by a company called Corinth, which has been mentioned previously. If you play our previous Dark Pictures games, you'll actually find like kind of newspaper articles relating to Corinth's space program and stuff. So it's all sort of building this big world as we go. We get better and better at creating branching narratives. There's a lot of pitfalls that you can make when making branching narrative. We get a little bit better at our craft each time. We also listen to our fans a lot, and we do a lot of user testing, so interesting to see where we should keep focusing on. We're really good at cinematics. Our fans love our kind of cinematic sequences. We keep that, but where we start to move towards more kind of active gameplay is really, really interesting. That has been pushed by quite a lot of fan input there. Directive 8020 is coming to PC and consoles next year, so go out and wishlist it now.
That was Directive 8020, the first instalment in the second season of the Dark Pictures anthology.
Now next up, we're going to be taking a look at Void Souls, which is an abstract, minimalistic adventure game. And weirdly enough, you play as a heroic cursor. Here's hoping that the final boss is an Excel spreadsheet.
The demo for Void Souls has been a huge boon for us, and when Pineapple picked it up and gave us his opinion on it and told us that basically he thought we were working on something special, we immediately doubled down on this project. I'm Kartik. I'm the lead creative on Void Souls. Void Souls is a top-down, minimalist 2D Souls-like game where you play as a triangle exploring a dark fantasy world. Unsurprisingly, Void Souls is very much inspired by all of the FromSoft games, but we're also really inspired by some of the more modern indie interpretations of the genre as well, like Tunic, like Another Crab's Treasure. All of these games have taken inspiration from the genre that FromSoft created, but have pushed it forward in a lot of interesting ways, and we're taking notes from them, and we're also trying to push it in our own direction. When a lot of players look at Void Souls, they have this inevitable knee-jerk reaction to be like, oh, that looks simple. It looks like it's going to be pretty easy to play. It's not going to really challenge me. It's not going to be very deep. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, the game has quite a bit of combat depth. One of the key focuses of the gameplay and one of the key elements of depth of the gameplay is in build crafting. There's big, heavy, strength-based weapons, there's quick daggers that scale on dexterity, and then along with that you have secondaries like throwing daggers or great bows, and that's just like the skimming the surface. That's just what you start with. As you explore the game world and you get deeper into it, you find so much more wildly different pieces of equipment that dramatically change your playstyle to the point where you'll feel like you're almost playing an entirely different game depending on the build that you choose. There's a lot of stuff that's going to feel very familiar to Souls-like fans, and even more so, very specific ideas and mechanics we've taken homage in the form of one of your equipment slots is called an artifact that lets you modify your playstyle in some interesting ways. We actually have an artifact in the game that, when equipped, kind of turns the combat flow into the Bloodborne combat flow with the rally system, which is one of my favorite artifacts because I love Bloodborne, or you can choose a different artifact that makes it feel more like a different Souls-like game. So it's all just kind of like paying tribute and homage to all these different games and their ideas. There's definitely a lot of debate over difficulty in specifically Souls-likes. Our design stance on it basically is that we have a designed difficulty, and that is settings are set to default. If you don't touch any of the settings, what you experience is what we have playtested and what we feel like is a good difficulty. That being said, I would not be surprised if, upon release, people play Void Souls and they're still like, you know what, I want a deeper challenge. So, we did something a little bit different with our accessibility, where it's more like pure customization. Meaning, if you feel like I have too much health in this game, you can change the settings so that you take more damage if you want to. That slider goes both ways. You can make yourself take more damage, you can make yourself take less damage. If you don't like the stamina economy that we've designed to be the base level of difficulty of stamina economy, you can make it more lenient. But if you really enjoy that tense feeling of always being low on stamina and knowing the right time to dodge, you can also drag the slider in the other direction. You can fully respec and change your entire build at a moment's notice, more or less. I, as an RPG and Souls-like fan, really love min-maxing and build crafting, and I always found myself as a player frustrated whenever it felt like the only way to do this in some games required having 5 different saves going at the same time. By letting the system be a little bit looser and a little bit more approachable, it'll give players the opportunity to experiment a bit more and experience more of the game, and if we're lucky, it'll be a great introduction to the rest of the wonderful Souls-like genre. In Void Souls, every boss has a distinct musical track associated with it. I'm really excited about the soundtrack in this, in that I think we're exploring a musical genre that hasn't been approached yet in the Souls-like genre. It's a little bit breakcore, a little bit chaotic piano mess, and I'm already just having so much fun listening to the soundtrack when I'm not playing the game, and I really hope that players will do the same when the soundtrack releases on Spotify. One of the features that I'm most excited about for Void Souls is our challenges system, where a lot of games will do New Game Plus in that you keep your gear and enemies just get tankier and enemies just hit harder. We went a slightly different route. Our iteration of that means that when you restart the game, you unlock this new mode called the Nox Trials, where every time you play the Nox Trials and beat the game in a Nox Trial, it adds a new modifier to the game itself. And that's quite often not just enemies have more health, enemies deal more damage. It's more often than not something that actually changes the way that you play. For instance, speaking of stamina economy, one of my favorite modifiers that will get added on at one of the levels of Nox Trials is that if you abuse your stamina, if you continue to mash your stamina while it's empty, your maximum stamina will decrease until you die or rest. So it just further makes it more challenging if you're not watching your stamina carefully. There's a bunch of other modifiers that we have in there that will make replaying the game feel fresh and interesting and make you reconsider the kind of builds that really work. A really skilled Souls-like player will probably beat this game in 3 to 4 sittings, but if you're really experienced, then I'd really be curious to see how many Nox Trials you can get through and how long that takes you. So Void Souls has a free demo on Steam right now. I really hope people will check it out and give it a shot. It's got a decent amount of playtime in it for a demo, and we'd really love to hear what you think. And if you want to give us some feedback, please join the Discord. There's a link inside the game, and I'm pretty sure there's also a link on the Steam page. So please play it, talk to us, let us know what you think. We're eager to have the game in the players' hands.
That was Void Souls, coming very soon to a mouse near you. But now, I love VR. The sooner the world ends and we can retreat into our headsets, the better. That's what I say. So I was very excited to be asked to come and test the Roto VR Explorer Chair, a brand new state-of-the-art device that lets me do my 2 favourite things: play VR and sit on my arse.
I'm Elliot Myers, I'm the CEO of Roto VR. Roto solves the problems of being able to sit down, consume and engage with 360-degree content. If you play VR, this is the best way to experience it while seated. So it works with MetaQuest, and we've got a head tracker that clips onto your headset, and wherever you look, the chair automatically turns, and we have Rumble as well that adds haptic feedback. So the problem we solve is, how do you sit down and explore 360 degrees without getting motion sickness and it feeling natural, comfortable and immersive? So without Roto, you use the joysticks to move around, and that causes a problem because either with smooth locomotion you get motion sick because the inner ear and the eyes need to physically experience what you see, otherwise your brain assumes you've ingested some poison. So what developers do is they snap you 30 degrees every time to avoid that motion sickness. And so we teleport around these days. It's become industry standard, and that's not the natural immersive experience that we want. What Roto does is we do the turning for you. We've got a head tracker that clips onto your headset. Wherever you look, the chair automatically turns, and by physically rotating in the real world, that means you don't need to use the artificial controls of a joystick to move around to solve motion sickness. So with Roto, you can explore naturally, no discomfort, and it doesn't break up the immersion. When I say it took us years to make it into such a small package, it wasn't easy. But yeah, it comes in one box. It's really easy to assemble. There's like 7 basic steps. And once it's assembled, you can actually turn it into a regular swivel chair by you can disengage the motor, pull out one screw, you can take off the safety guards, and it becomes a regular swivel chair that goes up and down and everything else. We haven't told anyone this yet, so this is kind of exclusive. You can add wheels and joysticks, and all sorts of attachments will come in the future. I've got a long history in this industry, and I didn't set out to make a game chair. We set out to solve the problems of consuming and engaging with 360-degree VR content. So you can try it in Selfridges today. It's in London, it's in Rome, it's in Paris, it's in New York Times Square. There'll be lots of places to try it in the US very soon. Well, you can pre-order it today. Street date is October the 1st in Europe and the US. And we have retail partners such as GameStop, Argos, etc. So you can get it in the major retailers. But you can buy off our website now, and you will receive it on October the 1st. So the price is $799 and £799 for the UK. We know it looks like a funny spinning game chair, but it really does improve the experience. It really is immersive. We recommend it. Anyone who's got some doubts, please try it out.
Who knows if Nathan's supple butt cheeks will ever leave that chair again. Now, if you were a fan of the video game Unravel, you might be interested to know more about Coldwood Interactive's new title, Hela, where you play as a witch's familiar.
It's a very friendly and playful open-world exploration adventure game where you play as a tiny mouse, a witch's familiar, who runs around in this open and interesting world, collecting magical things to brew into remedies for the local folk.
My name is Martin, I'm from Wind Up Games, and we're here to talk about Hela today.
My name is Jacob, and I'm also from Wind Up Games. I'm a technical director here.
We worked on another game series before, the Unravel games, so there's a lot of that DNA still in this thing. You can play it single player or co-op. Since we want it to be such a playful experience, it's really like you want people to play with, someone to witness all your shenanigans and mayhems. Of course we have a grapple hook, it's a game. It has to have a grapple hook.
Yeah, a very special grapple hook.
The mice have this little companion themselves. They have a magic backpack in the shape of a frog, so the frog has its tongue. So you can use it as a grapple hook, but you can also use it to sort of make little bridges.
I really like the sandboxy feeling of the game, and we have such robust systems for doing everything. We're working a lot with physics, so we have very stable online physics. Just experimenting and trying out new things is so fun.
It's fun when you have something that starts out as a happy accident and then becomes a feature down the line, because like, yeah, that was really fun, let's make it even better. That's kind of like the vibe that we're trying to go for.
So we have a lot of stuff in the game with animals, both interacting with animals and befriending animals, etc. It will be a very interesting place to just, as I mentioned before, play around with stuff and see what happens.
And it's also like one of those cases where it's really cool to play as a tiny character, because even sort of the small animals become pretty impressive next to you. So if you meet like, you know, a dog is going to feel like a dinosaur to you. Hela is a 4-player co-op game with exploration and adventure in a beautiful Scandinavian environment where you play as little mice, being mischievous and having fun. It's coming for PC and consoles, and you can check out our Steam page and wishlist.
A mouse with a grappling hook, what's not to love? Now, if you love Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy, or anything 80s inspired, then you're going to want to keep your eyes out for Beyond Galaxyland, a retro-futuristic title that's looking to do something very interesting when it comes to turn-based combat.
As the very universe unravels, and all life hangs in the balance, you better start believing in heroes. Guys? Stranded a billion light years from home. No idea if Earth still even exists. And a sentient gas cloud devouring the cosmos? You're not gonna save this universe alone. Skyrocket across the far reaches of the galaxy to assemble a ragtag crew of specialists that might just tip the balance. Though with every planet teeming with galactic nemesis and a secret power manipulating reality from behind the curtain, defending time and space might be easier said than done. Beyond Galaxyland, plummeting to Earth on September 24th. Wishlist now. Guys?
Now, you know what, my friends? Video game developers, they are absolute geniuses, let me tell you. And especially the minds over at Zorro Arts, who decided to take a look at the entire indie gaming space and said, you know what this needs? A bloody kart racer.
My name is Matteo. I'm a 21 years old solo developer from Germany. I run the studio Zoro Arts and I make video games for 4 years now. And about 1 month ago, I started to make a new game called Ultimate Indie Racing. And it's planned to be one of the biggest indie crossover video games of all time. It's an arcade racer with online and local multiplayer. And you can play between like 30 to 40 different indie game characters to choose from. Like Career from Another Crab's Treasure. I plan to have a really cool lineup of video game characters. I started after playing Mario Kart with my brother, and he asked me to make a video game, a racing game in 1 day as a challenge. After 3 hours of development, I posted some early prototype on Twitter, and the people there really liked the idea and asked me to make a full game out of it. 5 hours later, I made a new post on X, and this one did really well. Then people started to ask me to build in their characters into the game, and I really loved the idea, and then it clicked in my head and I wanted to make an indie game racing game. So I wanted to have like multiple indie game characters, like Bo for example, in the game as raceable characters, and the idea came like that. Yeah, I really want to have like a different approach because Mario Kart has its item boxes and you can use items, for example, but the Ultimate Indie Racing game should be character abilities, so it should be more like a hero racer, and I want that in my game too. Yeah, I really want to have character abilities from their game inspired. Also, like, there will be maps inspired by indie game worlds. So for example, I plan to make an underwater world for Maki's Adventure. I want to have a cupboard map that you can, for example, be inspired by Paperclay, because I really love the game. Right now my main focus is on the networking stuff, on the back end, on the game logic, to make a prototype ready to play, because I really wanted to be a playtest with the public Steam users. Of course, the maps will be Easter eggs, because the maps will be designed around indie games, and I plan to have many Easter eggs on the maps for people to race beside an Easter egg and see, oh, I really like the idea, or I really recognize this character, for example. So I really want the maps to feel unique and cool to the indie games. Because it's a racing game, I would say like 2 racing inspirations for me that are Mario Kart and Victory Heat Rally, I think it's called. It's a really cool game. And I love the art style from this game. From the abilities, you could also say like a hero shooter, because you have ability, but that is a really wide comparison. I think Mario Kart and Victory Heat Rally would be 2 games that are my inspirations right now. For me, it was a big surprise because it was like a joke project. Like when I tweeted about Maki's Adventure, I expected the numbers, but Maki's Adventure didn't do that well. But when I posted the first post about the indie racing game, it blew my mind, to be honest, because like I just had this 3-hour prototype and it had like over 500 likes on the first 3 posts. And for example, also on the Steam page, I got like 400 wishlist on day 1, like in the first day. And like having so much people waiting for the game is so big for me and such a big honor for me. Yeah, it was so cool to see so many ideas and also get approached by big publishers where I play the game myself, and they suddenly followed me on Twitter and then they asked me to build in their characters, and the publishers that I love the game too and play the game, so it's a pretty big honor for me, and it's really cool to see as a developer. With the one tweet that took off really good was the Another Crab's Treasure reveal, because they also retweeted it and they also helped me a lot, and they're also a really cool developer. I really love them. Yeah, I already made a Discord server in the last days, and there are already some people on it, because I really want to get the ideas from the players, and Discord is a really good place to like gather and collect ideas. So if you want to bring your ideas, or if you want to follow the game, I think the best thing is to look at the Steam page of Ultimate Indie Racing, and then you can find all the links to keep up to date. Yeah, I'm right now at Gamescom showing off my roguelike video game called Rogue Jungle. It's a wide genre mix with dungeon crawling, deck building, and of course survivor-like elements such as Vampire Survivor. If you want to play a game like that, if you like Hades, dungeon crawling, and for example deck building like Slay the Spire, you can find me in floor 10.2 in the indie area.
Nothing better than a good kart racer. Now, escalators. You might think of them as moving staircases that help you reach a vertical destination, but not Jules Gill. Oh no. He sees them as the perfect place to get developers to pitch him their games.
Stairs. I bloody hate them.
They're bad for the knees, and apart from comedy pratfalls, they're bad for everything else. But luckily, I'm here at Gamescom, where they have these escalators. In fact, I love them so bloody much that I've invited a ton of my developer friends onto them to talk about their upcoming projects, but with the stipulation that they have to tell you everything you need to know about their video games in the time it takes to ride one of these majestic beasts. And all of this was made possible by the wonderful people over at DJI, who sent over this, the Osmo Pocket 3. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, this is Gamescom 2024, and you're watching the Escalator Pitch. I'm here with Ijam, who's going to tell you everything you need to know about Tormentor. Go!
Yeah, Tormentor is an intrigue horror game inspired by the classics, in which you will play as a child who is playing another game, avoiding to getting trapped in it. So that child will need to solve puzzles and fight bosses.
It's a game within a game sort of thing?
Within a game, yeah.
Oh man, and that sounds like an absolute head trip right there. And when can people play this?
You will be able to play it later this year.
Hey guys, ready for game night? See you in 5. Hey!
Let's play!
I'm here with Mauricio, who's going to tell us everything we need to know about All On Board. Go!
So All On Board is a VR platform that enables you to play board games in VR.
Amazing. I'm a huge board game fan, so this sounds amazing. So what consoles is this going to be available for?
It's going to be available for MetaQuest and Steam VR in Q1 2025.
Oh, fantastic. So all your favorite board games in one place?
Yeah, and you discover new ones too.
Amazing. That's been Escalator Pitch.
So, what are we playing next?
I know things have been hard since I've been gone.
I'm here with Annika, who's going to tell us everything you need to know about Closer the Distance, starting now.
Yeah, so Closer the Distance is an emotional, story-driven game featuring elements and gameplay mechanics you might know of classic life sim games. In the game, as a player, you take on the role of a young woman from a small town who, after her untimely death, now discovers that she can look down on her loved ones and her hometown and even influence some of their actions.
That's amazing, and the best part is that the game is out right now on PC and current-gen consoles, and that, my friends, has been the Escalator Pitch. I'm here with Patrick, who's going to tell us everything you need to know about Ruffy in the Riverside. Go!
Yeah, Ruffy in the Riverside coming for Steam and consoles in February next year. And it's an amazing art style, all hand-drawn. We were drawing for 7 years now.
7 years?
Yeah, really. A lot of drawings, and you go through the world and you can change everything. Just copy and paste it. Grab it, throw it, there you go.
He's not joking around, by the way. You can actually grab the environment and paste it anywhere you want. It's crazy. It's Ruffy in the Riverside, and that's been Escalator Pitch.
Ruffy and the Riverside. Swapping to PC and Nintendo Switch this winter.
Death, Lady of Men.
I'm here with Sean, who's going to tell you everything you need to know about Deathbound, starting now.
With no throat. It's a Souls-like, but it's not Elden Ring.
No.
Not Dark Souls.
No.
Party-based Souls-like.
Yes.
Not party-based like Fall Guys, but like a CRPG. 7 characters, 4 of them inside of one body, switching between whenever you want, including when you're in combat. You can go from hitting with a hammer to making a big magic spell. It's cool.
Absolutely amazing. The best part is it's out right now, and it's on pretty much every single console. That's been Deathbound, and this has been the Escalator Pitch.
What is it about escalators that speaks to you so deeply?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's the thrill of danger or just the sheer sexual arousal. But either way, let's move on and talk about Mangragora, which may well become one of your new favourite Metroidvania titles.
I'm Alex, Community Marketing Manager for Primal Game Studio, the team behind Mangragora. Mangragora is an RPG with lots of Metroidvania and Souls-like elements, and it's all played from a 2.5D side-scroller perspective. I'd say that it's very unique sort of blend of lots of different genres and lots of games that we love. So we have a lot of influence from games like The Witcher 3, lots of Metroidvania games, the Souls series. So we're just trying to put together everything we love about so many other amazing games and just try and turn it into a unique experience. I mean, it started off as just an idea with our 2 creative leads, and then more and more people joined the project as they saw, what it was becoming and how much potential it had. And now today the team is around 50 people, and we're all super, super excited to be able to, bring Mangragora to players and have everyone enjoy it. When I came on board, obviously I saw pictures, I saw videos and stuff like that, but actually having it in your hands and being able to play it is just such a mind-blowing experience. It's like, okay, this is even more than it appears, and it's just so cool. So the said giant wall behind me is Matron Layla, one of the bosses from our game, and it's really cool to see it here at the booth in Gamescom, and we're really excited for people to take photos and, give her some lunch as well and make sure she's well fed. Definitely a game where you really need to get to know your enemy. There's definitely a lot of skill involved, but it's also very rewarding as well when you finally manage to beat the boss and you can say you did it. There are 6 classes in the game, and each has a very sprawling talent tree, and as you level up and you get points, you can then purchase all the skills, and you can also sort of mix and match so that the trees are sort of interconnected. So we have the Vanguard, which is kind of like a very heavy hitter. We have Flame Weaver, where the skills are very sort of fire-based. We also have Wild Warden, which is more sort of nature-based, and Nightshade, which is kind of an assassin class. I mentioned Vindicator, which is sort of priest. It's a sort of deep storyline. I mean, your character is kind of thrust into this very dangerous world, and there's lots of unforeseen consequences to early decisions. And it's just you kind of figuring out the truth of this world and seeing what that means for you and everyone else in the world around you. We're really excited for people to be able to play Mangragora. We'll share more details on the exact release date as soon as we can. We're aiming for 2024, and we're really excited to be able to share more. We hope people wishlist the game on Steam and help support us.
We've all dreamed about playing a game as a fox who gets to kick about with a raven. Have we? And thankfully, Interview Studios made that a reality back in 2020 when they released Spirit of the North. And here they are dishing up a delightful sequel with Spirit of the North 2.
Here's a closer look at the game. Spirit of the North 2. You play as a fox thrown into this world that's under a dark curse, and your journey starts and is guided by your raven companion, which leads you on a journey through this sort of isolated world that has fallen into ruin. And it's an emotional driven story, and you kind of find your place into it. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's a fairly epic adventure.
I'm Jacob. I'm one of the co-founders of Infuse Studio, and we're a really small studio, and I do a lot of the 3D art, level design, lighting, just world building, I guess sort of art directing as well. Taylor also does a lot of those things.
I'm Taylor Christensen, and like Jacob said, we are both owners of Infuse Studios. My focus is usually more on story and gameplay, whereas his focus is on graphics, environments, and 3D models.
I'm Pav Gecko, and acting as an audio director on the project. So I'm a composer on the project, as well as a sound designer, and I implement sounds.
As far as what's unique about Spirit of the North 2, well, you play as a fox, which is fairly unique. There's not a lot of animal games that have hours and hours and hours of gameplay, so that alone is unique. But it's also in a genre that is fairly new and unique and unexplored, to where we're completely relying on the music and we're completely relying on the visuals to tell a story. And that's with, keeping as much UI off screen as possible. This one has a little more UI than the first game, just because we've introduced more mechanics, but we still try heavily not to have it on screen, and no narrative. There's no waypoints like floating on around the UI to tell you where to go. It's a thought-provoking adventure guided by music.
The music is quite important in the game to tell the emotional story. We decided to take a step further than what was the case in the previous game, and this game has an interactive soundtrack that reacts to the environments and whatever the player is doing, and it's quite a challenge, but it's an interesting challenge because you have to cover a lot of cases and make sure that the soundtrack flows nicely, so it's not just a case of providing the atmosphere. In a game like this specifically, that's very emotional. It is very important for the music to provide some emotional hooks for the player.
The raven's name is Thought, and she
joins you on the adventure at the very beginning. She is your guide primarily, introducing to you some of what you should be doing and where you should be going. But she's also a companion through your journey, and the character's destiny and her destiny are intertwined in a way that, working together, you meet your end objective. It is an open world, and the jump targets aren't hand-placed. It is procedural, so it is finding targets that you can jump to as you move around the world. That means that you could probably find places and explore paths that we didn't intentionally set for you as devs. So that opens up a whole thing of testing and perfecting. And like Jacob said, this is something that has been working on for 3 years now, and multiple versions of this jump target system. And then in addition to that, you're not constrained to the target system. So if you are sprinting, the targets don't appear. So you can sort of go in between sort of these long sort of fast jumps where you're sprinting, and then you can turn to these more controlled jumps where you're sort of traversing over, across ledges and beams.
We have a rune system where you get rewards that are runes, and you equip them kind of like pieces of armor, and they go on a certain slot. So like there's like a head slot, shoulders, a back, and a tail. And the different ones, they give you different abilities. And there are variations of those runes that can change the ability slightly. For example, you have a glide, like from the Raven. The Raven can pick you up when you're jumping and glide. There'll be different glide runes that alter that mechanic, so that instead of just gliding, you maybe go up a little bit and then glide, or things like that. So I'm really interested to see how people react to that and how they think that they like that. And we also have a new perk tree. You get perk points from doing different main objectives in the game, and you're able to make your character better, more resistant to things, or you can hold more wisps, various things like that. We didn't have anything like that in the first game, and we really are looking forward to see how that resonates with people.
Spirit of the North 2 is coming at the end of this year, 2024, to Xbox Series S and X, PlayStation 5, and Steam, and Epic Games Store. But I would like to just say thank you to our fans. We are incredibly grateful that we are able to do what we love to do, which is make games. And it is because of the success of the first game that we've been able to, in large part, have a good relationship with the publisher and have the funds to fund this game. And we hope that this next game is what all the fans have been wanting. We've been listening and we've been implementing, and this second game, it's a gift to those players and a gift to all the new players. We hope they love it.
From Spirit of the North to Spirit of the Samurai, now a 2D action game where it's all made using stop motion.
You better stop any motion you're doing right now to take a look at this game.
Spirit of the Samurai there, and it will be on consoles, in your hands, and maybe even on your heads later this year.
What is this? I thought sport was illegal at Gamescom. Police! Someone, get these guys arrested. Anyway, next up we've got something very special. It's a surprise sequel to indie favourite Wilmott's Warehouse. This is Wilmott Works It Out. Take a look.
It's amazing how many times I've had ideas while being interviewed for things like this.
Wilmott Works It Out is a chill puzzle game where you play as a little fella called Wilmott who likes to unwind from his job by putting together puzzles at home. So they get delivered and you unpack these deliveries with a load of bits in them and you fit them together and you're making a bunch of beautiful pictures which you then hang up on your wall. And then over time you get access to more rooms in Wilmott's house and you get to decorate them and hang the pictures up. And it's the next game in the Wilmott's Warehouse franchise. I'm Ricky Haggart. I'm a game designer. I'm the creative director of Hollow Ponds.
I'm Richard Hogg. I'm a game designer and I'm a visual artist, and we're here today to talk about Wilmott Works It Out. This game is kind of a sequel. We made a game about 5 years ago which we called Wilmott's Warehouse. It's the same character, but he's at work, and Wilmott's job is to organise the inventory in a warehouse, which I know sounds really exciting, but it's a really sort of colourful, fun game, and it's all down to the player where they put the stuff in the warehouse. We wanted to make another game with Wilmott, and we had this idea to use exactly the same character and the same mechanic, but instead of organising a warehouse, he's making puzzles, making picture puzzles.
Another part of the Wilmott cinematic universe is that there's now a board game. Working with CMYK and Shut Up and Sit Down, we announced this. Available for order now. It's a co-op memory game which has a lot of overlapping art with Wilmott's Warehouse.
Sometimes Ricky sends me a parcel that's just a jigsaw where he's taken it out of the box, and I get the delight of making a jigsaw puzzle but without knowing what the picture's going to be until it's finished. It's definitely more relaxing. You're not wasting time looking at this image on the box constantly. Anyway, yeah, that's definitely an inspiration for this game, is that sense of like revealing a thing and going, that's what it is, as you make a puzzle.
Yeah, there are lots of people who love Wilmott's Warehouse and who sort of talk about how like relaxing and like how like important like way to chill out it was for them when they played it. So we were keen to make another game, but we didn't want to make just a direct sequel.
The game was relatively successful, so the opportunity to make another one was kind of there.
In this game, you're doing puzzles, right? And they're pictures. But a thing that starts to happen relatively quickly is that you start getting leftover pieces after completing a puzzle. Like the box that had the pieces in it had some extra bits, and those extra bits maybe looked quite a lot suspiciously like one of the pictures that you were making, but they don't fit quite, and that's because they're for another jigsaw puzzle. So there's lots of like aha moments of like, I thought this was this, but actually it turns out it's this completely different thing from this other jigsaw that's like big added to over time. It's quite sneaky. It's such a nice feeling.
That is actually something you never get with like real jigsaws, and I think there is a sense in which an aha moment is something that's unique to games, in the sense that it's like working a thing out, solving a thing, and it's part of what's fun about making games, is having things that are like hidden things or secret things. Interestingly, the previous game, Wilmott's Warehouse, has what I like to call emergent puzzles, in the sense that most of the things that make that game difficult are the player themselves making a mess, whereas this game is much more authored, because I'm drawing these pictures, and as I'm drawing them I'm going, if I make the snowflakes in this one look like the stars in this one, then when these get delivered people won't know the difference, and then that'll be fun when they figure that out. Well, the first game has a sort of a backstory, but it's very low-key. Ever so slight sort of black humour in the first game, where Wilmott gets performance stars, and he gets like morale-boosting posters, and then he gets little pep talks from his boss, and that very simple storyline does go somewhere if you play the game to the end. And then with this game, Wilmott's at home, all these puzzles are being delivered to him by a postal worker, and there's a relationship there between Wilmott and that person, and that relationship develops, and something happens whereby that relationship kind of crosses over with things that are happening in the puzzles in a way that we probably wouldn't reveal at this point.
I think also you get to see a lot of Wilmott's house. You get to see what Wilmott's bathroom's like. You get to see what he's got in his bedroom.
We get to choose what he's got in his bedroom from a kind of library of plausible and perhaps implausible things that he might put in his bedroom. People who've never played either, when Wilmott Works It Out comes out, they should play them both together, and they should alternate.
Yeah, that's
so
brilliant.
Wilmott's at work for a day, and then he's at home, and then he's at work. That would be really good.
Yeah.
We should even make we should make like a special, like
a launcher that does that for you.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Some of the puzzles are like homages to things. I've only made one so far that's a homage to another game, and I hope that the people that made that game see that, because it'll hopefully make them laugh. I guess that's an Easter egg, and there's a couple of other things a little bit like that.
Yeah, two games I think are broadly in this sort of category of relaxing, arranging things. There's Unpacking and A Little to the Left. They're not the same mechanically at all, but I think that they occupy the same sort of headspace.
Wishlist on Steam, find us at Gamescom and hopefully play the demo, and check out the previous game, Wilmott's Warehouse, if you haven't already seen that, and pre-order the board game as well, if you can.
Can you now just do all that again, Dick, but properly?
How would you like to play a game that's like a perfect cross between Pokemon and Uber Eats? Well, this is Gladieaters, a game in which you play as the world's best combat chef, cooking up a whole load of food monsters to compete in turn-based battles.
I'm Oliver. I'm the lead developer on Gladieaters, the creature cooking game where you cook food and then that food transforms into powerful food creatures for you to fight your opponent's food creatures in turn-based combat. I was chatting with a friend of mine, thinking about how I wish I could go back in time and make the first premium creature battler game. They weren't listening to me at all, and as a separate point, they said that I should make a cooking game. And I misunderstood them and thought they meant a cooking creature collector game. That's a great idea, and the rest is kind of history. The world of Gladieaters sort of started off when scientists discovered the means to give food life via the Cal particle. Initially, there was war, naturally, but then after that, countries decided to deal with gladiator combat in the Colosseum, and you play as one of 7 or 8 chefs fighting each other in the Colosseum for the crown for their own personal reasons. The story is very much unique to each chef. They each have relationships with other chefs that develop as the game goes on. They have all these different reasons for being there, and that very much does come across in dialogue. You do unlock the chefs as you go, but it's very open-ended as to which one you decide to play as. You can play as any of the chefs you'll be fighting. There's no chef that's non-playable. Same goes for all the gladiators. You can cook any of the foods that you fight against. One of the most unique things about Gladiators is the fact that you're cooking your creatures. The fact that you are sort of trying your skill at all these various bite-sized cooking minigames and trying to get better at them, and then supplementing that with commanding your Gladiators in combat. So I think that jump between these two very different genres and sort of needing to be good at least one of them is really unique. As a developer, my favorite aspect of the game is the team battle system that we have, where you are bringing a team of 6 gladiators into combat, and they potentially could be against another 6, and they all fight at the same time. So what that allows is for these creatures to synergize with one another, compensate for their other strengths or weaknesses, shield them, boost them, buff them, debuff the enemy. For me as a developer that has to play the game a lot, that's my favorite part, because that's where you get to explore lots of different turn-based synergies and really craft your own sort of strategies. When it comes to balancing, there's a lot of spinning plates when it comes to making sure that everything works together, in the sense that the effect of the cooking games on your creature's stats has to have an impact, but it can't be, if you're bad at cooking games, you can't lose, right? And then additionally, you're dealing with all the same abilities that your opponent's dealing with. So it needs to be strong when the AI plays it, but also strong when you play it. I think our approach to balance is very much, as long as each ability is seeing play in each gladiator's sort of spectrum, and every gladiator sees some play, that's what we want for the balance. For every ability to have a place, and for there to be no ability that you just never use. With gladiators, we wanted every ability to have some purpose, and every gladiator has a mix of damage, utility, healed, shield. They don't just necessarily fill one role, they're very left of center in their design. Ultimately, there's so many different things that players can do, and while we might think that a certain synergy of, onion and tomatoes is really powerful, when players get it en masse, we need to see what they do and respond in turn. Maybe they discover something that we haven't thought of, or they haven't discovered something that we think counters something else. You really just need to be responsive and patching and balancing as frequently as you can, and just taking it from there. I think that's the only real way. That you can't anticipate everything, so the only real way of balancing is to be fluid with it. We've got a Discord right now where people can join and leave their feedback on the game and the various balanced or unbalanced things they see. I'm really excited for players to find their favorite gladiator or unique synergy between a few gladiators. That's going to be a really special moment, as well as a lot of the story beats that happen that fundamentally change the game, the genre, how it's played. That I'm really excited for players to hear about, because I can't tell them. I think the story mode will very much harp on games that people like, genres that people like, and it may not be obvious what those are from an initial view or the trailer, but there's definitely more than meets the eye when it comes to the core loop of the game. If you love Pokemon and or Cooking Mama, I think Gladiators will be a game for you. There's a lot of different ways to play the game. There's point-based mode, where if you're not a fan of or just suck at cooking, you can actually spend points to build your team if you're just a pure turn-based tactics guy. Additionally, there are run modifiers where Each team has different tastes and affect your abilities and your team's passives. And I think we've gone over ranked multiplayer as well, where there's going to be a ranked leaderboard that players get to compete in for varying skill titles. All of the abilities are hand animated. There's about 200 frames of animation for every gladiator, which really brings to life all of the combat. You know, if they're casting an ability, you don't just see the name and the effect, you actually see it happen. So that's something I'm really proud of. Gladieaters is coming to Steam in 2025. Head over to our Steam page to wishlist the game, or our Discord to chat more and hear more about me.
And you'll be able to scoff down as much as you want of Gladieaters in 2025 when the game launches. Now, if there's one thing that's better than a bullet hell game, it's a bullet hell game that you can play with friends. And that is exactly the case that you'll find in Warden's Will, a game that you can play solo or with your mates online. Or, in the case of Nathan, painfully and desperately alone. What?
Warden's Will is a third-person movement shooter with roguelike mechanics and bullet hell combat. The game takes place across diverse vertical worlds and pits you against an army of bad robots set to conquer the galaxy. Play solo or band together with up to 3 friends in co-op mode. Each round is a unique experience, pushing your reflexes and strategy to the limit as you face increasingly difficult enemies and special bosses. Choose a Warden. Master your movement skills. Use a variety of weapons and abilities, customize your playstyle with augments, and survive the relentless enemy waves to save the galaxy.
Grasshopper Manufacture took us all by surprise earlier this year when they announced a remaster of Shadows of the Damned, the 2011 cult classic written by Suda51 and produced by Shinji Mikami. It was a collaboration between two of gaming's legends. I was lucky enough to have a sit down and chat with them about this project, and I only asked about Killer 7 once, which I think showed great restraint. When will we see a Killer 7 sequel?
作りたいよね、あれはね。そうですね。カプコンが権利を。
We'd be happy if Capcom would allow us to do it. Yeah, we don't know how it's going to turn out or anything, but next time, sometime in the future, I'm thinking of going down to Osaka with Mikami and talking to Capcom and seeing what's up.
So for anyone who hasn't heard of Shadows of the Damned, like, how would you describe it to new players who didn't play the original?
Originally, it came out in 2011, and unfortunately at the time, EA didn't do a whole lot to promote the game for us. So there were a lot of people that weren't aware of it when it came out, probably a lot of people that still aren't really aware of it to this day. But yeah, we feel we were able to put together a really cool action game and decided that we wanted to bring it back with this remastered for modern day consoles and modern players. Originally it was only out on the PS3 and Xbox 360. But to explain the game really simply, it's basically sort of like a road trip movie through hell.
And for folk who have played Shadows of the Damned, why should they come back to it?
The main character has some new costumes. It's not just like a change of clothes. It's some really crazy ass stuff, like, it's got holes in them and just a, completely different look than it was before. And I think that's something that old players would probably find pretty cool also. Also, there's a New Game Plus mode as well. And these are both things that we wanted to implement the first time around, but weren't able to. So we're finally able to get those into the game, and we're really excited about that. Also, on top of that, it's got there's a few other things I'd like to emphasize as well. For one thing, it's 4K compatible. Also, it's on pretty much all platforms. It's going to be on PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X, Series S, Xbox One, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. So pretty much anyone can play the game, and we're really looking forward to seeing what younger players think of the game. But for those of you out there who have small children at home, there's some pretty messed up shit in the game. So you probably want to wait until maybe after you put your kids to bed to play the game, because yeah, it's not really the kind of thing you want to play in front of children.
You've both worked in video game development since the 1990s. What is better and worse about creating games now versus then?
What's gotten better is definitely we've got much more freedom of expression now. What's gotten worse is that game development takes a lot longer and it's much more of a pain in the ass. Everything costs a lot more money these days. We've got a lot more freedom of expression now. These days, since there's a lot more that you're able to do, it takes a lot more time to explain to all the different staff, okay, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it. So because of that, it takes a lot longer, and again, it costs a lot more than it used to.
If you could go back in time to give your younger self a piece of advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
I'd probably tell myself to focus a bit more on creating the games that you actually want to create them, how you want to create them. It's a bit of a hard question, but I'd tell him that there are going to be a few people along the way who are going to come along and try to rip you off or try to kind of screw you over. So watch out for those people and be a little more careful.
If you were to recommend one of the games that you've made to someone who has never played a video game before, which game would you pick and why?
Aladdin for the Super Nintendo, Super Famicom. Fire Pro Wrestling.
Could I ask Shinji what his favourite Suda game is and Suda what his favourite Shinji game is?
I'd say either Killer 7 or The Silver Case. So it says, I love Resident Evil 4, but I'd have to say God Hand, definitely God Hand. And Mikami says, sometime in the future, let's go together and try to get the rights for God Hand, because I'm pretty sure they'd be pretty cheap.
What do you think has been the most exciting game of the last 10 years that isn't a game of your own?
Red Dead Redemption 2. I was just really impressed by the way they created the game and the way they showed kind of the end of, Western expansion and the whole, the gangs and how they kind of like fell off and everything. And they really went full on like every little detail. Like they didn't really half-ass anything. They did even like the really small, fine details just perfectly, and just it's really impressive how they did that.
もう10年経っちゃったかな。僕やっぱホットラインマイアミかな。
It was just super impressive and in a good way kind of shocking, and the way the gameplay cycle goes and everything, even to this day, it's still super fun. I'm still a huge fan of it.
Do you ever return to your own games to play them for fun, or does it feel too much like work?
Once the game's released, I never touch it again.
Me too.
What is your comfort video game to help wind down?
Race game. Race games, because you can really kind of get immersed in it. When I've had a really stressful day and play a racing game, I can just kind of race around like at super high speeds, and all the shit that's been bothering me just kind of goes. And as for what kind of games, generally F1 games on PlayStation and consoles in general. Yeah, it's become pretty much a daily tradition, a daily custom for me now. So Marvel Snap. But when I end up getting my ass kicked and like losing 8 cubes all at once, then that just kind of makes the day even worse.
You weren't making video games. What would your job be instead?
I don't know exactly what genre it would be or exactly what I'd be making, but probably creating things, creating something. I'm really not sure, but I feel like if I hadn't joined the game industry, I probably would have gone back to my hometown in the boonies and would probably be working like at some factory or something right now. And instead of creating games, I'd probably, I'd go to work, come home, and then spend the rest of my time playing video games. I'd be more on the gamer side of things instead. And probably constantly waiting for Mikami's newest game to come out. Like, when's the new game coming out? When's the new game coming out,
Just 3 gaming legends discussing the form.
3? Are you including yourself in that?
Did you beat Duke Nukem Forever? No.
No, I didn't. Anyway, next up, we're going to be talking about an amazing action platformer with a fantastic hand-drawn animation style. It is The Eternal Life of Goldman.
Imagine being able to make something that beautiful with your hands.
Alas, it will never happen for me. I have what is known in my family as a stupid hand.
Hey, don't say that. Remember that time you strangled that guy for me? That was great.
Oh, that's really sweet of you. Wait, hold on. Is he still filming? I'm going to get him.
The Eternal Life of Goldman is a breathtaking platform adventure. inspired by ancient legends and fairy tales. It will take you back to this era of classic 16-bit platformers done in classic frame-by-frame animation, all done by hand. Hi, I'm Andreas Schmiedecker. I'm the producer of the game The Eternal Life of Goldman for THQ Nordic, and the game is being developed by WeP Studio. The main inspiration for The Eternal Life of Goldman are these platformers of the 16-bit era. So your Donkey Kong Country, your Mega Man X, your Super Castlevania. And we hope the game will take you back to that era, or, will make you experience that for the first time. And it is really, this kind of side-scrolling adventure, but with the accessibility and the quality of life features of a modern game. So many people ask about the art style and the inspiration behind the art style of The Eternal Life of Goldman. It is mostly classic animated movies and French-Belgian comics, mostly Hergé and the Linclair art style. So to create that art is really a very difficult and complicated process because everything is done by hand. And it's really, there's no other way of doing it in that level of detail. So it can take a lot of time, it can take up to months or even up to a year for a biome to be finished. It is really intense and difficult, but we feel it's worth the effort at the end. The main character of The Eternal Life of Goldman is somewhat unusual because it's an old man with a cane and a beard that you don't see that often in video games. He's a reference to, these ancient fables and parables where you would often have an old man as protagonist who would be, witty and outsmart his enemies. But it's also very specific reasons within the narrative why he has that age and looks like that I will not go into details because of spoilers. I think what I like most about the story of The Eternal Life of Goldman is at the surface it's something very simple and a classic video game premise, right? You arrive somewhere and you're tasked with finding and killing a god. But step by step you realize you're part of something even bigger and even more existential. So I would say mechanically the most interesting part of the game is the cane and what you can do with it. Because, you can jump around like on a pogo stick, but you will find new parts for it and it will give you new abilities. And, it's just fun to play around with those and combine them in situations and solve them like a little puzzle. And, it's a way to challenge the player, but also have fun with it. And it's probably my favorite part. So the story of the game is you play as Goldman, this elderly man with a cane who is dropped on this tropical island that recently has suffered a catastrophe. And you're tasked with finding an ancient god and kill it. And I can't go into much detail right now, but you will learn why you're there and actually find out, the more existential layer of the story later on. And we're super excited for players to find that out on their own. So I think we're most excited for players to figure out all the small details about the world and, the story. So there's lots of small little things in the animation, in the backgrounds and foregrounds that you can find and look for that tell a story. And just, for players to figure it out, puzzle it all together, piece it together, that would be super interesting for us to find out. So there's a couple of hints about the story of the game in the audio of the announcement trailer. So if you listen closely, you already can get an idea of what the story is about. So if people ask why they should play the game, I would say, if it speaks to you, if you like the way it looks, if you like the art, you should definitely check it out. And I also think it is quite accessible. So there's not super difficult or obscure mechanics. It's challenging, but it's, easy to understand gameplay. And we feel this is why it's cool for a wider audience that just, like the way it looks and want to play it. I would say the biggest success for The Eternal Life of Goldman would be to actually recreate that feeling of these classic platformers, hand-drawn 16-bit era, but also make it accessible for the first time for younger players like myself who actually were too young back then to play them, to really, feel that special era of gaming. The Eternal Life of Goldman will release on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series and PC. And the release date is yet to be determined.
Massive thank you to the developers of The Eternal Life of Goldman. But now, card games are having a renaissance at the moment, and you love to see it. The old boys like Solitaire are shaking in their boots thanks to Crown Gambit, a brand new card battler for you to add to your list of favourite card games. And I tell you what, you play your cards right, and we might just have a trailer for you. You'll feel like you've been dealt a full house when Crown Gambit comes out in 2025.
Indeed. Now, the game that we're standing next to, Mouse, usually takes the world by storm pretty much every single time it hits the internet because of its over-the-top violence and incredible cartoony graphics.
How to describe it? It's a bit like if Mickey Mouse had a baby with the Doom Gang.
That's disturbing, but we have a lucky scoop for you PIs at home because we are chatting to the developers about Mouse right now.
Mouse, it's like Doom and Cuphead had a baby. It's a great hook, and we love it, and we use it as much as we can. I'm Mateusz Michalak, I'm CEO of Fumi Games, and I'm one of the original creators of Mouse.
Hello, my name is Maciej Krzemień, but most people refer to me as Magic, and I'm the lead producer of Project Mouse, which I'm really proud of. Mouse is an FPS game set in the 1930s that utilizes a very unique rubber hose art style that was very popular in cartoons in 1930s, 1940s, but since then has been long forgotten. It's not your run-of-the-mill boomer shooter, it's much more. The story itself is set in 1930s America, and even though it's cartoonish in its style, it's also pretty gritty, and it touches on some difficult topics, such as economic crisis and rising up from it, some far-right politics that were ever-growing back then, and some other difficult subjects. So while it's cartoonish in its form, we're not shying away from some really difficult stuff. Our protagonist, named Jack, he's a World War I veteran who became a private investigator in civilian life. And as always, in a noir story like this, it started with a seemingly simple case and a mysterious woman. And of course, on top of all the serious stuff that I mentioned, there is always place for some cartoonish, wacky humor.
Yeah, we thought that world in the 1930s was quite similar to what we have right now from the political point of view and other things. So we thought it would be great to connect this time with our times.
We also always felt that even, with touching on some difficult subjects such as far-right politics, for example, if you want to criticize them, you can do it directly, of course, but it's also a good way to criticize them with humor, similar to what Charlie Chaplin did with his movie The Dictator. He basically laughed at fascism, and that's what we are aiming at as well. We want to criticize it by making fun out of it. I cannot reveal how many, obviously, but yes, you can expect more than one ending. Like I said, it's not your run-of-the-mill boomer shooter. It has some other elements, and one of the elements that will be crucial to the gameplay itself and how the story unfolds will be gathering the clues. There will be some clues that the player can gather, and some will be required to progress, but others, they can be omitted. And only if you gather all the evidence, if you connect all the dots, then you will unfold the entire story. We are inspired by games like Doom, a Metroid Prime trilogy, Bioshock, Warhammer 40k Boltgun, and obviously also Cuphead when it comes to the art styles. You can keep an eye out for a ton of references and Easter eggs. We want to make some wink-winks towards people who know that stuff almost 100 years ago, but we're also putting a lot of Easter eggs referring to other games, because obviously, when you take so much inspiration from other video games, you have to pay an homage.
David, who is the lead programmer on the project, he posted a small, quick video on TikTok in May 2023, and it blew up. It was 2 million views in few days. And we thought, okay, this is great. We have something here. Then we posted another video and it got even more views. So we quickly prepared a Steam page because we couldn't lose this, this wave of massive people looking at our game. And quickly I prepared a really quick trailer, the first gameplay trailer in May, that it was also viewed, millions of views on social media. And from there we thought, okay, we have something here, something exciting. So we should put as much effort as we can to develop this game.
Being so popular on social media, it's a bit scary sometimes because, having so many people interested in the project means that we have to deliver a good product, a good game, because otherwise we can lose that interest in an instant if the game is subpar somehow. So it's a lot of pressure. It's sometimes a bit scary and the entire team feels that, but we always think of it as a great opportunity because most of us have worked before on some smaller games, some indie games. So, working on something like that puts a huge responsibility on all of us, but we're happy to accept it. Every single day, we discuss on how to improve the game and how to make it better. At the same time, exciting, but also a bit scary, just a bit. So as for the music, we are using a blend of both originally composed music specifically for the project, but we are also using some licensed tracks from the era, and we're just not throwing those tracks into the game and leaving them as they are. We are working on our own adaptive music system because we want to have, what you hear to correspond with what you see on the screen. So whenever there is a slower paced, more detective part of the game, the music will be toned down to reflect that. But whenever there's, heated action, you will hear some upbeat music, some big band music, and we already are happy with what we have in the game when it comes to that department. Mouse is coming in 2025, so please follow us on social media, wishlist our game. We're doing our best to give you something really unique just next year.
And you better get your traps set for Mouse when it comes out 2025. But up next, if you love Ghost of Tsushima or Rise of the Ronin, then Phantom Blade Zero might just be up your samurai street. It's fast-paced, it's intimate, and its boss battles are right here for you to have a look at.
Sadly, my friends, this brings a close to our Gamescom 2024 coverage.
Oh yes, but if you feel like you're needing more gaming content, then why not head over to the Future Game Show YouTube channel? But sadly, we really need to get a move on now because the German authorities have issued a warrant for Jules' arrest.
Yeah, what can I say? Usually people survive my Dance Revolution routines, but not today, apparently. But I tell you what, because the people at home have been so absolutely wonderful across our coverage here, let's reward them with one more bit of gaming goodness.
One more?
Yeah, I tell you what, we're going to show you something from Atomfall that comes from the brilliant mind of the developers behind Sniper Elite. And it's a doozy, my friends.
Right, but before we go, we better say bye to all the folks. Bye, Gamescom.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Except that guy.
Yeah, not you.
Yeah, you know what you did.
Atomfall is a survival action game set in 1950s Yorkshire, where the player wakes up inside a quarantine zone surrounding the Winskill plant, and they have to uncover why they're there and what has caused this quarantine and how to survive the mysteries that they find there. I'm Ben Fisher, I'm Associate Head of Design for Rebellion, and I'm working on Atomfall. With Atomfall, we wanted to try something new, and that involved bringing in lots of different reference points. So that means games, but it also means film, TV, classic British sci-fi, classic British fantasy. One of the games that has influenced Atomfall is obviously, you can see some parts of something like Fallout in there, but also other games in that similar genre like Metro, even a bit of Bioshock. One of the biggest influences for us has actually been Rebellion's own Sniper Elite series. Those games are typically built around the player having one clear objective and then a load of sandbox options on how to achieve them. What we thought would be interesting was to build a whole game around that kind of premise. So you've got one clear objective, and that is to find a way to escape and understand the mystery that you find in the place. And then you've given all the freedom that we can to explore different routes, find different people that might help you escape, and choose how to express yourself in that sandbox gameplay as you explore. When you start the game, you wake up in a bunker inside this nuclear quarantine zone. You don't know who you are, you don't know how you connect to this larger story. The major motivator for the player through the story is finding out how they relate to this disaster, what this disaster is, how they can escape. We don't tell you what your backstory is, but we plant clues through the game about what it might be. When you exit the start bunker, there's a mysterious red phone box ringing in the middle of the dales. You go and answer the phone and you hear a mysterious voice say, "Oberon must die." So you don't know who this voice is, you don't know who Oberon is, you don't know who you are. These are all threads that start your journey through the game. One of the cool mechanics in the game that really emerged by itself over the course of development was not having a main quest that you might typically have in another game, because that feels like you're being driven by other people's desires. Instead, we wanted to give you the feeling of being an investigator, uncovering a mystery, uncovering your relationship to it and how it relates to the characters that you find across the game world, piecing together those clues into one giant jigsaw, essentially. What we've gone for in this game is a dense, concentrated sandbox experience. You can explore through several sandbox maps that are interconnected. You can travel back and forth whenever you want to. There are characters that say that they will help you escape the game world, but it's up to you whether you trust them or not. We never pass judgment, and we never tell you which is the main quest or the main thread. This is all a kind of investigation for you to uncover your story and how you relate to it over the course of the game. One of the layers of the player's investigation is that they can find friendly characters to talk to and try and uncover new leads to help them understand what's happening. But part of that motive to make the game one interconnected experience and about telling one specific story, we've set up the conversation such that you can kind of fail the conversation. If you lead the conversation in a direction that the other person doesn't enjoy, they'll shut down, they'll stop talking to you. If you talk about things that they're interested in or you offer to help them, they might open up more and you uncover more leads. We really tried as hard as possible to not cast judgment on the way that the player can investigate through the game. So theoretically, you could kill any character in the game and you'll be shutting down options of ways to escape or leads to uncover, but it's still possible to find a way to finish the game. There are characters you can barter with as well. This is a post-apocalyptic environment, so money has no meaning, but people are willing to barter and trade for information or trade for goods. And even when you come across a hostile enemy in the wilderness, that doesn't mean that a fight immediately kicks off. They've got a threat system where they will tell you to back off, and if you back off and leave them to try and survive, then maybe a fight won't happen in the first place. So every time you encounter someone hostile, you have the choice of, do I want to get into this fight? Do I think I could really survive it? Do I want to sneak around and ambush them from another angle? The combat of the game is very intense, high stakes, and it means that each combat encounter is effectively like a little dynamic puzzle, an emergent puzzle based on where you find enemies, what equipment they've got, what equipment you've got, and what strategy you try and deploy. Really, we want to make sure that the player has lots of room for personal expression and a sense of driving their investigations forward. And if they get into trouble, they should feel like they got themselves into trouble and that they could try and find a different route through the game. We wanted the combat in this game to feel very kind of brutal, high stakes, kill or be killed survival. So the combat system blends melee combat options with ranged combat, so you can find melee weapons and throw them, you can kick enemies, you can smack them with a heavy strike or jab at them with lighter strikes, and we want you to mix up these options. Ammo is very spare as well in the game, there's not much of it around, so you've got to choose every shot carefully. You'll die in a couple of hits, but so will the enemies, so it's all very high intensity, high stakes. So that kind of high-intensity survival is the philosophy we had in mind when building the game. But we want to make sure as many players as possible can enjoy the play experience. So we've approached difficulty in a slightly different way, and we approach it instead as different play styles. So the game has a survival element, it has a combat element, and it has an investigation element. And we give the player the options at the start of the game to fine-tune any of those channels of gameplay to have the play experience that they prefer. We've added lots of accessibility options as well to make sure the game is playable by as many people as possible. Best keep alert. The combat in Atomfall is brutal, and you will probably die a lot. But we give the player lots of tools to help them survive, to give them the sense of scavenging and trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic environment. There's a crafting system to allow them to craft healing materials or weaponry like Molotov cocktails. When the game starts, the combat's not as intense as later on in the game. So we give you the materials to craft consumables and throwable weapons to help yourself survive, and you will unlock skills over the course of time that allow you to craft faster, allow you to heal faster, let you stun enemies for longer when you kick them, allow your thrown axe to stick in an enemy when you've thrown your melee weapon at them. So the threat increases, but your skills increase at the same kind of rate over time. So Atomfall's a dense, interconnected sandbox of a game, and we've seen some typical run-throughs of the game being 20 to 30 hours, that kind of ballpark. But it's worth bearing in mind that the main threads of the game, the main escape routes, take you through drastically different play styles, and that the game is sort of deeply built for replay. So the public will be getting their first hands-on experience with Atomfall at Gamescom. Given that the game is a sandbox, we've set a 20-minute timer and we just let people run amok and see how they play. What I've seen so far is that people can play in drastically different ways and get a very, very different play experience. So it's going to be great fun to watch how people tackle the game and how far they get before they die. So it feels to the team that Atomfall has really found a kind of unique blend of lots of reference points and influences. So if you like immersive sim games like Fallout or BioShock or Sniper Elite, it feels like we've got a nice unique blend of the kind of mechanics of those sorts of games. And then in our case, it comes with that unique classic British sci-fi storytelling wrapper. Atomfall is coming to PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox, PC, a Day 1 Game Pass in 2025.